Hi, I'm Tyler Condi, and this is episode 7 of the Primed Fatherhood podcast. Thanks for joining us today. This is the second part of my interview with clinical therapist Delynn Lamb. If you missed the first part of this interview, you may want to go listen to it to hear about his background first. In this episode, Delynn teaches the 5 things a successful father does with their kids every day. He also teaches how to correct children and how to keep progressing in life by overcoming perfectionism. We have answered the call. We are committed to a greater purpose. We are fathers. Past achievements do not guarantee future success. We will prime ourselves often to navigate each new challenge. We are capable, brave, and relentless. We will remain undaunted. Well, Delynn, I'm excited to have an extended conversation here to talk more in depth about some of the things that we've discussed in this first episode. So I think that it would be good to have you give us the definition of what the role of parenthood is.
Look, I love that question, and I want to answer it in 2 ways. That the goal of parenting, and for me, the goal of parenting is to create healthy, functional, successful, and happy adults. And remember, this is a journey that as we raise kids, and right now I have 4 2-year-old grandkids, and it's so cool. And I watch them, and I watch their parents with them, and you know, my daughter was down with her daughter, and I just watched the struggle because 2-year-olds have so much energy. And I want you to remember, we get through the 2-year-old phase, and then we go through the pre-adolescent phase and the adolescent phase. But if you keep in mind, wait, my goal is to create healthy, successful, functional, productive, joyful kids. And I have 18 years to work on that. I think that helps. Now, I think there are 5 things that successful parents need to do. And this is my list.
Okay.
And if you can do these 5 things every day, you're succeeding. Even if you're sitting there saying, wow, I really messed up today. I want you to remember, you can't break kids. They're pretty resilient. And even if you have bad moments, they're pretty resilient. But I want you to focus on these things with kids. The first is to love them. And people say, yeah, I love my kids, but I need that to be understood as a behavioral concept. How do you show love to your kids? And begin really simple. Tell them every day you love them. And remember that to the developing mind, touch is critical. And so give them hugs. Touch their shoulder. You know, for boys who love to wrestle. But find that way that you behavioralize the expression of love. And every day as you're sitting at the end of your day, ask yourself that question, did I show love? Now again, love is be interested in what they're interested in. Be interested in what they do, in who they are, in what they like and who their friends are. Be interactive with that. But I think the other thing is teach them what you love. You know, my dad loved hunting. It's the only time of year that he was different with us. And it was an amazing time. And so even today, you know, I gave up hunting for a lot of years, and I've just started again, and the same feeling is there. It's cool. Find a way to love your kids. Second, speak to their self-worth. That remember that developing within them is their own concept of self. And look, their critical voice is there. So often we find our critical voice with our kids. But every day, make a goal to say something that impacts their self-worth. Tell them, you're amazing. You know, you did that really well. Wow, I'm so proud of the way you're doing that. You know, you're such a great kid. You are worthwhile. Do you know you bring joy to my life? Something that speaks to their self-worth. Make a goal every day with each of your children to speak to their self-worth. Okay?
Awesome.
Spend time. Spend time with them. And remember, time is such a precious quantity. It is. It's just such a precious thing that what I find is that between work and religious obligations and other things, my time is very limited. But I got to spend time. And even now that my kids are gone and married, I find time each week to call them and just talk to them. But I want you to think about, how can I spend time with my kids? And no matter what age, spend time with your kids. Spend time as a family, but more importantly, spend time with each kid individually. I don't care if that's 30 seconds. I would obviously like it to be more than that, but spend time. In spending time, we teach them, but we also teach them about their value and about how we value them. And so every day, find a way to spend time, even if it's just walking in the room and saying, hey, how was your day? What was a cool thing? What was a cool thing about your day? What did you learn? What did you struggle with? Spend time with each of your kids.
Yeah, I like that one especially. I was reading, I can't remember where it was last week, I think, but it was saying that parents' connection to their child, or really that's reversed, the child's connection to the parent is developed between ages 1 and I think it was 9.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's tempting to think that, my kids are happy to play by themselves, I'll just let them play by themselves or play with someone else. But even if they're totally content to do that, if you're not making that connection and spending the time early on, then they don't have that connection to rely on you later when things get harder. And you really need to be there for them.
Look, people talk about how difficult it is to raise adolescents. Can I tell you, I loved raising my adolescent children. Loved it. Loved every minute of it. I don't know that my wife loved it as much, but I did.
Yeah.
And Todd, I think you're correct that any investment you make in your children in creating a relationship, when they become adolescents, and the natural tendency of adolescence is to separate, to individualize, to hang with their friends more than with you. But if you've established those connections, they will value every moment you spend with them as a teenager. Okay, so I really believe that one.
Awesome. So we started with love, and then
speak to their self-worth.
Speak to their self-worth. Spend time.
Okay, the next two are critical, and it is direct and correct. And we need to understand that kids are very malleable. They are a blank slate, sort of. They all have their different personality. They all have their different perspective of life. They're uniquely themselves. But we teach them right from wrong. And so that's the direct. That your job as a parent is to teach them right from wrong. It's to have values, to have morals, to be able to teach those values to your children so that they have the capacity of delineating right from wrong. And this is difficult in this time because there are so many competing influences that want to teach ourselves right from wrong. And I think the biggest gift we give a child is a moral compass. But I don't know that we talk in terms like that anymore. When I was growing up in this little Mormon community, we talked about morals. We talked about moral compass. There was accountability to a community, and it was really cool. And so one of the things I want you to sit back and just ask the question, am I providing my child with a moral compass? Am I teaching them the difference between right and wrong? But it's more than knowing. A moral compass gives us the ability to act on. A compass gives us the ability to find the direction. Okay, true north, whatever it is. And so in this day and age with so many competing influences, we teach our kids right and wrong, and then we give them opportunity to make decisions. Now what that means is we give them opportunity to fail. We give them opportunity to make mistakes. And then we come to the other part, which is correct. But I can't stress the importance of moral compass, a value system. All developmental psychology, is and I'm a student of developmental psychology, and it teaches us that we have to develop a moral code within our children. And that moral code then guides them for a lifetime. But it's based in value, and those have to become foundational. Simple things like a value of honesty, a value of respect, a value of loving others, and very simple things that we teach them. And as they grow, they become more complex. And as they become teenagers, well, that's the time that they need to have that value system and that moral compass to navigate the world around them. Because with the complexity of social media, with the complexity of so many things in their life that are competing to teach them that something is right when it's not right. And so we direct. And we do that until they reach the age of majority. And hopefully at that point they have that moral compass to go on. And then it's cool because then we still get to be mom and dad. We may not be parent anymore. Parent is the one that has the ability to correct. And so we lose that ability. But we still have the ability to give advice and to help. And that's really cool. And then we correct. I don't like the term punishment. I don't like the term discipline. I like the term correct. And what I mean by that is in all correction of children, you have to understand your goal. Well, what are you teaching by correcting them? It could be as simple as you made a wrong decision, and this is what's wrong with that. This is why it's wrong, and now there is a consequence for that. And there has to be consequence for behavior. Okay, there has to be. And parents have to step into that role of understanding that they are the one who establishes consequences. But the difference between discipline and punishment for me is in the consequence. It has to teach. It has to be focused on, well, what's my goal? What's my objective in this? And so we create rules, which we're teaching. Rules become values. And then we're correcting rule violations as a way of instilling values. But so often it becomes about the punishment. And the message in that gets lost. And that's why I like the word correct. Because we're correcting their direction. We're correcting their value system. And we're teaching. And so if parents understand, if I can do those 5 things in my kid's life every day, I'm going to raise healthy kids. if I can love them, if I can speak to their self-worth, if I can spend time with them, if I can direct them and correct them, we will raise a generation of healthy kids.
That's awesome. I really like your differentiation from correction and punishment. I think a lot of times it's easy to fall into the trap of punishment as a quick reaction to something that they do wrong, and we should be kind of detaching ourselves and thinking, what is the correction that needs to be made, and what's going to make that correction come across in an understandable way. Because a lot of times the kids don't even know what the punishment is for that they're getting,
I agree with that. I think often we make the mistake in believing that we have to correct immediately. Well, we don't. And second, we'll make the mistake of correcting through our own emotion. And so I always advise, first of all, get in control of your own emotion. And then second, what's my goal? What's the teaching message here? What's that teaching moment? And then sitting the child down and through love, beginning with, hey, I love you, but you need to know your decision was incorrect. And then explaining why it was incorrect, explaining the value that we want instilled, and then giving the consequence. It has to be done in that way. My mom, loved my mom, but my mom would, believed, and she had me and my brother who we deserved to be beat occasionally. But I remember that I never learned anything through those moments. I learned, okay, I gotta be more sneaky.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I learned. So I think it's critical to have those goals in mind as you're correcting.
Yeah, I've caught my wife and I saying something to our daughter who is 3, oh, we don't like it when you do that. And then either putting her in timeout or giving her a spanking or something. And then I've thought, oh, it doesn't matter to her if we don't like that she's doing that. We need to explain to her why it's wrong.
Oh, that's good.
And I don't necessarily catch myself in the moment when I'm doing it, but at least by the time that timeout is over, we can kind of give her a little one-liner. If you do this, it hurts people, or, if you do this, you'll hurt yourself, and letting her know that that's the reason, rather than just telling her we don't want her to do that.
Yeah, I like that.
And I think that's it's not natural for someone to correct that way. It takes a little bit of extra thought and effort.
Look, two other thoughts with that. The first is we make mistakes. I had this great lesson when I made a mistake with my children, and I apologized, and their reaction was amazing. That, look, it's okay to not be perfect, and if we make mistakes, apologize. All that does is build that relationship. And second, fathers, you have the obligation to do these things. I think so often we delegate that to our spouse. And this is what I understand is children look to their father for morals. And I often will tell moms that you have kids until they're 12, and then they start looking at dad. And I think that is so correct. And remember that as a father, you have the obligation to be doing these 5 things with your children every day. Every day. And then what I would add to that is the best teacher is example. I remember my grandfather, and I loved my grandfather, and I just remember this simple honesty in the way he treated people, and I was like, I want that. I want to be that. I just want to be simply honest with people. And how we act is as or more powerful than what we say. And so we have to be congruent in the message. So as fathers, we have to be congruent. You want your kid to have a good work ethic? Have a good work ethic. You want your kid to love others? Love others. And we have that obligation to not delegate, but to stand next to our partner in parenting our children. Now, look, it is okay to have differences in philosophy. I love the concept. Well, it's my concept. It's the concept of parallel parenting. That if we have the same goals in mind and are doing the same 5 things, if we're doing them a little bit different, that's okay. It doesn't have to be total consensus. There just has to be 2 healthy people engaged in loving, directing kids.
There's a lot in there to unpack, I think, with all of that. I want to go back to what you said right after we finished with the 5 things you need to do with your kids, and that was that you need to apologize, and you need to. I think what it comes down to is be willing to not always be right. I think a major problem with taking on a role as important as fatherhood is this stigma that you get, or this pressure that you feel to be perfect. And how do you tell people to balance that? I mean, we talked earlier about how being a father, you have the opportunity to affect 7 generations. That's a lot of pressure. That makes you feel like you have to be perfect. But at the same time, we've talked about how kids are resilient and they'll take an apology. So what advice do you have there for overcoming that?
Let's
perfectionism.
Wow. Let's talk about perfectionism, and I can talk about it from my own failure with it. So let's spend time with that. I think that men, especially, I know that when I was being raised in the 60s and 70s, in a small Mormon town in southern Utah, that somehow I got the idea that being righteous or healthy was connected with perfection. And I challenge that concept in people all the time in my office with the comment about, why do we believe that we have to be perfect? Look, being perfect does several things. The first is it sets an expectation that we will fail at every day. And so if within our moral code, within our value system is that belief we have to be perfect, we will fail every day. And so what happens when we fail is that gives material to the critical voice who says, you're not good enough. You're not okay. Now remember, we can never have quietness of mind. We can never be content or peaceful if the critical voice is telling us that. But nowhere that I'm aware of does it say be perfect. Yeah, there's that scripture, be ye therefore perfect.
In me.
Yeah, but I believe that even in that scripture, what it's saying is eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Be therefore perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect eventually. And I like that.
Yeah.
And so in my life, having to fight that because it creates incredible pain to fail. and to not feel worthy or worthwhile or not be okay. And I had to finally get to a point where I adopted another part, another stage. And I had to begin with understanding that I was flawed. And when I could say, I'm a flawed human being and that's okay, and smile, because it would make me smile when I would say that, because I would feel this pressure begin to leave. The day I understood that I could be flawed was a great day, because if I'm flawed, I don't have to be perfect. And so one of the concepts that I struggled with, and I think many struggle with, is that concept of I have to be perfect to be okay. Well, it's a lie. That we have to accept that we are flawed. I'm a work in progress. That I need to continue to work on becoming the best version of myself. And I'm glad I've been given almost 60 years already. So I'm a much better version of myself today than I was when I was 30. But I think that's what we adopt, is that concept of, I don't need to be perfect. That what I need to be is in the process of growing and progressing. What I need to be is understanding that I'm flawed. And so often I'll hear myself saying that during the day. It's okay to be flawed. I'm a flawed human being and it's okay. And when that concept truly struck home, it was miraculous. Because all of a sudden I was free from that understanding of, wait, I have to be perfect. Because I've been trying to do that for so long and failed so badly at it, that critical voice was so hurtful. So hurtful.
Yeah.
And so Tyler, I think the two concepts that are critical there is an acceptance that I'm a flawed human being and being okay with being flawed. And then remember what I taught you, being at peace with the man you are, being at peace with your flaws. And then moving the word perfection out of your vocabulary and adopting a concept of progression. I think men and women are on this earth to progress in becoming the best version of themselves. I hope all human beings have that goal of I want to be the best version of myself. Mm-hmm. But I got to be at peace with the version I am today, which is flawed, which isn't perfect.
Yeah, that reminds me of that quote that says, expectations are resentments under construction.
Yeah.
And if you're expecting yourself to be perfect, or your family situation, or your home, or your job, that expectation is just going to make you miserable. There's no way around it. You have to expect things to be a little imperfect and expect to be working on things and progressing through things. Otherwise, you'll be miserable. Or a lot of times what I've felt when I've expected that is I get paralyzed.
Yeah.
I just don't act because I want what I do to be perfect. And so I have to kind of force myself through it. So
yeah, but think about that. If my expectation of myself is to be perfect, I will fail every day. Every day. And that critical voice will be angry and destructive to my self-worth every day. And then I will begin to feel like I'm not worthwhile or not worthy or not enough. And we set ourselves up every day in that context. And the other concept that I want to teach with that is a concept of guilt-free. And that means that I can fail. Look, the lessons I've learned in life, the big lessons, the big changes that have occurred in the person I am have come out of failure, not success. And so if I can accept the concept that it's okay to fail, it's okay to make mistakes and then learn from that, I think that's a great concept. But I want to learn from it. I don't want to repeat them. But if we can get to the point of I don't have to be perfect, I can be progressing, well, that also means that I can be guilt-free. That all of those things on my list that I have to do to be perfect, I can look at now and say it's okay that I'm not doing those and not allow guilt to come in. It's a list that says, I'll continue to work on that list. I'm okay with who I am today, but I want to progress, and I'll continue to work on it. But a concept of guilt-free is important because what it allows me to do is be imperfect. What it allows me to do is say to myself, do you know what? This is okay. Not going to get that done today. Not going to get that, maybe even, wow, that wasn't my best work. Okay. As long as we're engaged every day in trying, and I love the word trying, because trying reflects that, you know what? I'm doing the best I can, but sometimes the best I can may not be perfect. And we're trying. As long as I'm engaged in an honest way, in trying to do those things in my life that I need to do, then I'm okay. And then I got to get rid of guilt. If I go home to my house and I had a tree fall over, a big tree, huge tree. And I drive by it every time I drive in, and there it is. I've got it almost all sawed up, but 6 feet. And I'm like, oh, I got to go saw that. I got to go get the rest of that sawed, cut up. And then I think, but no, I'd rather go read. Then I got to be okay with that. I got to be okay with that concept of I can't feel guilt. Look, that tree's going to be there until I cut it up. When I cut it up, great, I'll burn it. That's cool. But if my mind and my soul and my body is saying, you know what, you have got to deal with other things right now. You've got to be content and be quiet and be peaceful. But I'm going to do that. And if reading brings that, I'm going to do that. I love to run my chainsaw. I do. I will eventually cut that up. Come on, it's only been 2 years. I'll get to it. But I want the concept of guilt-free, that giving yourself permission to look at a list and go, yeah, okay, not today. Today, I take care of myself. All right?
I love that. The concept of guilt-free, just in the whole conversation of trying to be balanced, because you have priorities of things that you have to do in order to help your family and take care of their needs and all of that. And then you've got the other side of you've got to take care of yourself, and then you've got things that you have to maintain, whether it's around the house or whatever it is. And then you've got all the things that you want to do. And if you can let yourself know I'm doing my best and I'm covering my bases where I have to, even if it's not perfectly everywhere, and you can be guilt-free, then you can feel a little more balanced. I think a lot of times the people who are not allowing themselves to feel guilt-free are the ones who usually neglect themselves or neglect their family, depending on what they're doing. But that just drives them to overdo it in one area, and then that's when you get out of balance.
Right. Look, this is a challenge I would give everyone. And the challenge is to be able to say, I'm a flawed human being, and then smile. Mm-hmm. And what I want that connected to is a sense of peace within you. And you have to work at it. I'm a flawed human being, and that's okay. And then you feel that peace within you that says, oh yeah, it's okay to be flawed. Oh yeah, it's okay to be guilt-free. I don't have to be driven by the expectation that's unrealistic. That I no longer have to be perfect. I can be in my journey of trying. I can be in my journey of walking towards the best version of myself. And it's cool because however far I get along that journey in this life, well, that's as far as I get. And that's okay. I will never be perfect in this lifetime. And that brings me peace because you know what? That means I no longer have to be driven by that concept. Mm-hmm. But I want to be a better version every day. And so the challenge is be able to say I'm a flawed human being and smile, to feel a sense of peace with that.
That's awesome. So I think the two big takeaways from this would be the 5 things you do with your kids every day. You love them, you say something to their self-worth, you spend time, you direct and correct, right?
Correct.
And then this last portion of it is let yourself or tell yourself, I'm a flawed person, and then smile.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for spending this time with us. I'd love to have you on again and be able to talk through more things like coaching and all of that fun stuff that you've got awesome experience in. So we hope to invite you back.
I'll come back.
Awesome.
Thanks, Tyler.
Thanks. Delynn, I really appreciate you sharing your experience and wisdom with us. Thank you to everyone who joined us, and as always, if you gained anything from listening to this episode, please share it around. Please subscribe and leave a review wherever you are listening or watching, and join the conversation in the comments of this episode on YouTube. Thanks again for joining us, and stay primed.